there, but we're looking at 90 as a high, not 95 or 96, so that's good. Right now, 76 degrees, mostly cloudy. The problem is with the high humidity, always a chance for that pop-up thunderstorm. We had a lot of them yesterday, and that is the reason we're guessing why we got knocked off the air, both on 98.5 rather, and then also on AM 560. But over the live stream, of course, you're checking us out on all the social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, but now back up on Sports 56 and 98.5 FM. So we welcome you in. So we've had to move around guests in the lineup for today. Joe Mullinax is going to join us in about 10 minutes or so. He covers the Grizzlies for the Locked On Grizzlies podcast and a site called the Grizz Lead. And, of course, yesterday was Christmas for those covering the Grizzlies, as seemed like everything and anything happened. Of course, it was a busy day around the NBA with the free agency period beginning at 5 o'clock Central Time yesterday. So we'll talk to Joe. And then at 9:05, we'll talk with Mickey Barker, our Tuesday golf segment. Mickey will be in. And then at 9:25, Connor O'Gara, who normally joins us every other Tuesday at 7:25, will join us at 9:25. The senior national columnist for Saturday Down South, hosted the Saturday Down South podcast. Obviously, we have rolled right past the 8:05 time slot, so no Humdingers trivia coming your way this week. We thank our weekly sponsor, Humdingers, but the trivia will be back next Tuesday. Obviously, NBA, free agency, trades, all that's going on leads the topics of the day, but also Memphis basketball with some news yesterday as they've added a big. People have been waiting with bated breath to figure out what Penny Hardaway was going to do once the Dane Danger news became official and he wasn't going to be granted the waiver. What were they going to do to add to what was a minimal front line as far as depth is concerned? And they did add a player yesterday, a 7'1" center by the name of Simon Majak, who played in the Serbian Junior League. Didn't play a lot of games there. Played 7 games, averaged 17.3 points per game, 9 rebounds per game, and a couple, nearly 3 blocks per game in 30.7 minutes. He's from South Sudan. Don't know a lot of the guy or a lot about the guy, but he is big. He is tall at 7'1". So that is the second 7-footer now that Penny Hardaway has on his roster. 7'1" center Simon Majak. We also got some college football news to get into from around the country, some NFL news as well, and a little bit from Major League Baseball. We'll try to get to all of this today in this abbreviated Tuesday edition of the show. But I did want to mention yesterday that we had announced towards the end of the show the trade with Pittsburgh, but we did not have all the components complete. We knew that Jalen Ramsey was on his way from Miami to Pittsburgh. Ramsey goes with tight end Jonnu Smith. In return, Miami will pick up safety Minkah Fitzpatrick and a late-round pick swap. So that's the deal for Pittsburgh. The Steelers will pick up the bulk of Ramsey's new $26.6 million contract. But again, the story, of course, the Grizzlies, the NBA free agency period underway. And where do you start? These are moves, for the most part, that were expected from the Grizzlies. And then one that certainly became a popular possibility as the day progressed yesterday. I'm talking about Ty Jerome. But first and foremost, the news about Jaren Jackson Jr., as the two sides have agreed in principle on a 5-year, $240 million maximum renegotiation and extension. It's not technically the max deal because he wasn't all NBA and didn't qualify for that, but this is pretty much as he can make. And there was no question that the team was going to get this done if they could. And to get this done, there are still some things that they have to do financially. And one of those is going to be the Cole Anthony $20 million contract. They are going to buy their way out of that. Not sure, again, of what the particulars will be. if there's going to be some sort of trade involved with that, but they're going to come off the books of that $20 million, and that's going to go towards this Jaren Jackson Jr. 5-year, $240 million maximum renegotiation and extension. That is a lot of money. That is a lot. You're talking about $48 million per year for Jaren Jackson Jr. Also, Santi Aldama, we had heard that was a priority from Zach Kleiman, and pretty much what Zach Kleiman said was a priority became a priority. He wasn't giving us a false lip. He was talking truth. And Santi Aldama, according to reports, will get a 3-year, $52.5 million deal. Again, that can't become official until July 6th, which is interesting. It's a day after the Salt Lake City Summer League begins, which the Grizzlies will be involved in. So that's this Saturday. And then the next day, all these free agent deals will be announced officially. But Santi Aldama will get about $17 million a year. So between the two, Jackson and Aldama, you're talking about $65 million. Now, if that wasn't enough, because it seemed like the Grizzlies had a stranglehold on the bulk of the moves yesterday, right after the start, like 5 o'clock Central, boom, Grizzlies news. And then everybody else chipped in with their news, which we'll get to a little bit later on in the show. But Cam Spencer, as we thought, will come off of that two-way, which he had last year as a rookie. He'll get a 2-year, $4.5 million fully guaranteed deal. So he'll be a part of the 15-man roster. Non-bird rights, by the way, non-bird rights for Cam Spencer, but it's guaranteed. Then, after that, became the big news of the Ty Jerome signing. Played for the Cleveland Cavaliers, was a major spark for the Cavs coming off the bench. A shooter at 6'5". He's out of the University of Virginia, where he actually played a couple years with Jay Huff of the Grizzlies. 3 years, $28 million. That was the floor exception that they used on him. I think it's a really good pickup. I think Ty Jerome, he reminds me of an Alex Caruso only on offense. Like Caruso is the Tasmanian Devil on defense. Ty Jerome reminds me of that on offense. That he's that guy. He can really help spark your second unit. And I assume that's where he'll be. But that was, I thought, a pretty good pickup for the Grizzlies because you lose shooting. When you lose Des Bane in that trade with Orlando, when you do not sign Luke Kennard, and that was expected, who signed, by the way, a 1-year, $11 million deal with Atlanta. So they add some shooting ability in Jerome and really with Cam Spencer as well. But are there other things that have to be done? Yes, they have to, because we just talked about, or I talked about the Cole Anthony situation to make sure that the money's there, and it will be there, for this contract for Jaren Jackson Jr. But what else? Because right now, I think technically, if you don't count Cole Anthony, there's 15 roster spots full right now with contracts. But is there another deal? Will they have to get rid of more salary? And will they use maybe the veterans minimum on a big? Because they have not addressed that situation yet. We're going to talk to Joe Mullinax about that. We got other guests lined up for the rest of the week. We won't have a show on Friday because of the holiday, but plenty of Grizzlies guests to give us their insight on these moves, what it all means, and what other moves could be on the horizon for the Grizzlies. We'll talk about other moves around the NBA a little bit later on, including the West. It's like the rich getting richer. It's the West getting richer. The NBA also announced its salary cap for the 25-26 season at $154.647 million. That's a $14 million increase from a year ago. And oh, by the way, Jaren Jackson Jr., although already had a lot of money, is a lot richer now, is also, according to reports, changing his number from number 13 to number 8. John Morant tweeting out that his guys got their money, and he's absolutely right about that. His teammates, his boys, they got paid. Joe Mullinax joins us in just a second. Do want to tell you about Shoot 360 Memphis, a revolutionary basketball training facility that combines cutting-edge technology with gamification and provides instant objective feedback with hands-on one-on-one expert coaching. They got the 50,000 square foot facility in Cordova, the original in Collierville. Again, monthly membership. That's what they offer. You're not bogged down with some long-term contract. Now, if you want to sign for a year, that's fine. But I would suggest you sign up for a month, you try it out, and you're going to fall in love with it. Get the tour, whether it be in Cordova or Collierville. Let the folks at Shoot 360 Memphis take you around, show you what this technology is all about. There's also the instant feedback with the analytics. The numbers are right there. They don't lie. And then the one-on-one expert coaching you get as well. In Cordova, they're on Big Orange Road at 901-779-3176. You can call them and set up that tour or just stop by. In Collierville, 901-316-5500, that location at 85 Market Street. The future of basketball training is here. It's at Shoot 360 Memphis. Without further ado, let's continue this conversation as we talk Grizzlies with our good friend Joe Mullinax. He's the co-host of the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. He is also a contributor to Grizzlead. You can follow him on Twitter at Joe Mullinax. That's Mullinax. Joe, an eventful Monday. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on again. Yeah, Zach Kleiman, the Grizzlies GM, he wasn't about waiting around, was he? In about an hour or so, maybe even less than that, the offseason might already be done.
It's crazy how everything, he had his ducks in a row. It was like the draft as well. You know, he had it set up with Portland. He knew what he wanted to do. They pinpointed their guy in Cedric Coward. They went after him. They got him. And then yesterday, it was just one after another after another. It felt like it was the Grizzlies' free agency night, and nobody else was involved because it was, like I said, just rapid fire. And then, of course, everybody else got into the act. But moves that were made, Joe, let's start with what they did yesterday, moves that we knew were going to be made or at least attempted to be made, and that was the new deal with Jaren Jackson Jr. and keeping Santi Aldama. They did both. According to reports, they do so to a tune of what would be $65 million a year because Aldama is going to make $17 million on average for his 3-year deal. Jaren Jackson Jr. gets a 5-year deal worth $240 million. They got an option in 29-30, but that adds up to $48 million per year. That's a big commitment for those two guys.
Yes, it is. But you also have to keep in mind, and I know you know this, Greg, those are two unique bigs, especially in the case of Jaren, of course, having that sort of financial commitment, putting that behind a guy, you know, the rebounding issues have been talked about a ton over the years, but he is somebody that brings a level of athleticism, of talent to the table that the Grizzlies have never seen from the big man position. They just haven't. So to have somebody like Jaren, one of the top 20 or so NBA players this past season, under contract, you know, it's the start of a new era, right? My co-host on Locked On Grizzlies, DeMichael Cole, over the Commercial Appeal, he put out a piece this morning and he nailed it. You know, this is the start of a new run where you're going behind Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., for better or worse, right? And in the case of Ja, it's keeping him on the court. And in the case of Jaren, it's you're betting on him continuing as he goes through his prime here to not just be a 3-level scorer, to not just be an elite rim protector, but to also keep growing his game, become a better facilitator. You know, you're paying him like an almost max contract player. The time has come for him to keep growing to be that type of guy. And the same is true of Santi on a different level, right? Like Aldama, there's not many 6'11" bigs that can score the way that he can. And he showed it in the playoffs against Oklahoma City. He had some really strong performances. There's a reason that Detroit and other franchises were interested in him, even for his defensive flaws. There are no perfect NBA players. And, you know, Santi is one of those homegrown guys that has really developed as a really good sixth-man-ish reserve big. And especially with Edey out to start the season, since they haven't really addressed the center position yet, maybe we'll talk more about that here in a moment. But with Edey out to start the season, his role is only going to be bigger. So I think these were two signings that the Grizzlies didn't necessarily have to do. In the case of Jaren, I would argue they did have to do it. Santi, obviously, they could have done a sign-and-trade if they weren't really interested. but they're trying to find better balance on the roster in the wake of the Desmond Bain trade and this new era that has begun. And they're certainly in a better place between Santi and Ty Jerome, who we'll probably talk about here in a moment, that their bench looks like it's going to be much more capable of scoring some points this coming year, and working and intricate and being a little bit more intertwined with the starters than they have been in the past.
Joe Mullinax is joining us on the Sissy's Log Cabin guest line. When they traded Desmond Bain, the first thought was, all right, they lose a shooter, and the thought was that they were not going to retain Luke Kennard, which came to fruition yesterday as he signs with the Atlanta Hawks for a year at $11 million. So when you're losing that type of shooting, you got to look around and see where's that shooting going to come from. So obviously keeping Santi is a big step because he has that ability to knock down the threes, although he does have his lapses on defense. Now, they go out and they add more shooting. First, they turn Cam Spencer's two-way into a 2-year guaranteed deal. Not sure how much run he gets, but that's a guy who has the ability to knock down the three. But a guy who certainly has that offensive capability and came into his own, I thought, this past year was their free agent signing of Ty Jerome, who gets that $9 million deal or thereabouts, 3 years, $28 million, do the math. But Ty Jerome is a guy who can shoot the three at a high percentage, can get to the hole, is a really good offensive player. So they kind of fill. I'm not saying that completely fills the void of losing a great player like Des Bain, but certainly adding those capable shooters helps.
Well, if you look at it through the lens of the other name that you mentioned there, Luke Kennard, who signed a 1-year, $11 million deal with the Atlanta Hawks, would you rather have Ty Jerome and Cam Spencer at roughly $11 million or Luke Kennard at $11 million? Even as somebody that likes Luke Kennard, the answer is pretty easy for me. It's Ty Jerome and Cam Spencer, especially Ty Jerome. The fact that he was there for that room exception, 8.8-ish, like you said, $1 million deal, that just tells you how much the playoffs matter, right? Because he had a really bad series against the Indiana Pacers in which Cleveland got upset by Indiana, helping lead to their little magical run. They went on to the NBA Finals, and Jerome took a lot of the brunt for that because he was asked to be something, Darius, not there.
Garland.
Yeah, Garland, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Brain fart. Garland was out. You obviously had Donovan Mitchell working through some things, and Jerome was asked to be more than he was supposed to be, right? And I think that in the playoffs, when you're in that spot, it really can impact you. And Jerome had a bad series. There's no denying that. But I don't think many folks thought that he would be there at that number of the room exception. So the fact that he was, and the Grizzlies have this guy who's one of the best offensive bench players in the NBA, at least coming out of last season, that's a steal for Memphis. And that's going to be really helpful, whether it's Jerome playing alongside a Scottie Pippen Jr., that is much more possible than Cole Anthony, who hasn't been officially announced, but he's likely bought out of his deal from the Orlando trade. Ty Jerome can play next to Scottie Pippen Jr. Ty Jerome can play next to Ja Morant because of his size. He's again much more malleable with this roster than other guards would have been that they could have brought in. And it also allows for him, if assuming Ja is healthy and on the court, it allows for him to be in his ideal role as a reserve. This isn't someone that you bring in as a starter, to be honest with you. This is somebody that's offense off the bench. It's almost kind of like what the Grizzlies wanted O.J. Mayo to be all those years ago, right? That kind of guy that can be that instant offense, sixth man. And you saw flashes of it with Mayo back in the day. But between Jerome and Santi, you're going to have consistent scoring, whether it's, Ja and Jaren, Ja and Santi, Jaren and Jerome. There's all sorts of different ways that they can get this thing mixed up with obvious other pieces around them, where you can have a little bit more versatility. You have multiple defenders next to two scorers, and your offense and defense don't have to suffer. They can be a little bit more simpatico working together.
You mentioned Cole Anthony. He's gone. We know that because they need that $20 million to go toward the Jaren Jackson Jr. renegotiated contract. But it's not as simple as they're not buying him out. They're looking to try to make some trade, correct? Because if you bought him out, wouldn't you be responsible for that $20 million? I mean, how does that work? And what do you think ends up happening with Cole Anthony? Is there something that will happen where another player, let's say a John Conchar, is added into some sort of deal?
I'm sure Plan A is trying to just trade Cole Anthony outright, but in the absence of that, Plan B is probably exactly what you just said. They buy out Cole Anthony, and you're right. There's a certain section of that they would be responsible for in that buyout. And then you have a John Conchar contract there, about $6 million, that you would have to move on from. They haven't announced these things officially as a team because, as you alluded to, they have to. There's other pieces that have to move before that occurs. And, of course, the NBA knows this, right? The National Basketball Association is well aware that in order for Memphis to get done what it wants to get done, there are other pieces that have to happen first. So I think that today, tomorrow, you'll see some movement on that. You'll see the team find a way to clear up that space. Obviously, they wouldn't have had these things leak. You know, the rapid fire pieces of it. There must be a plan in place, but how they execute that plan or whatever the backup plan is still bears watching. But yeah, you've got players like Cole Anthony, Conchar. There's numbers that have to be shifted around for all of these dominoes to fall.
Yeah, right now, technically, right now, today, as we talk, there's, I think, 16 players on the roster. I'm not talking about Small. I'm not talking about Meshack. I'm not talking about anybody else. I'm talking about now Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who they picked up in a trade, Cole Anthony, who they picked up in a trade, who will not be with the team. Obviously, the addition of Ty Jerome. So, to fix the issue, at least maybe temporarily, at the beginning of the year with Zach Edey being on the shelf, it is pretty much universal that everybody feels they're going to add some sort of big. So if you're going to add a big, you have to have a roster spot for them unless you're going to sign a big to a two-way, which you're allowed to use, up to 50 games. So that may be the route they go, Joe. Do you think that the 15, not counting Cole Anthony now, the 15-man roster is set, or do you think there's a player that will be dealt, they'll bring in another player, presumably a big, or they'll go in the route, two-way player, and use that as your center until Edey's back?
It's a great question. And to be honest with you, I could see them doing any of those things. I think that we forget that Brandon Clark is technically a center. He's undersized for that position, but his skill set, everything lines up with him being a center. And there's nothing that indicates that Clark won't be ready for training camp here in a few months, coming off of that PCL injury in his knee. So very different from the one that Steven Adams suffered. So I think that Clark will be in that mix. Santi Aldama will be in that mix. Jay Huff. If you look at the current market for free agent centers, I think Precious Ashwa is somebody that maybe would be pretty solid to bring in. But you're not looking at a guy that is going to come in and automatically be that much better than Jay Huff, who's already under contract, right? So I think that they either are happy with where they are in that position or they're happy with their sequence of plans, whether it's the trade. You know, I posted about this on X before coming on with you. You know, Goga, from the Magic. There's reports that the Magic are trying to trade away one of their excess bigs. And, okay, I mean, we have a John Conchar. We know the Grizzlies and the Magic have been in touch in the last few weeks. Maybe there's a way to get a deal done there. But if you can't find a big that way, the two-way option is one that is pretty strong and stout that can add some depth there, protect you a little bit if the Clarks and Huffs of the world don't follow through the way you want them to. Or we don't know what Tuomas Isolo's offense really is going to look like, what his defensive schemes are going to be. We need to remember that it's possible that outside of Edey, it's impossible to go small with a 7'4", 290-pound guy. But outside of Edey, you know, maybe he does want to play a little bit smaller and Edey be more of a special attraction almost in his schemes that he's going to run. I think that we just need to kind of let it marinate and see how it works. And it's important to point out after the Bane trade and all these deals, assuming Cole Anthony is gone, they're going to be well below the luxury tax. So the Grizzlies are going to have lots of maneuverability to bring in somebody on a minimum deal, a veteran minimum. So say somebody gets cut or something happens in a trade and you need to be that third team to help facilitate something. The Grizzlies, with all of their own first-round picks, with all these different assets, these contracts that are very tradable, they can hop in at any point and be advantageous when other teams have something that needs to get done. So they probably have lots of different avenues that they can choose to try to address that big man position if they so choose.
All right, so bottom line here, Joe, before we let you go, and great insight from Joe Molinax, as always, co-host of the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. He mentioned his partner, DeMichael Cole. He is a regular with us. He will be on with us tomorrow. Also, Joe's a contributor to Grizz Lead. You can follow him on Twitter at Joe Molinax. Here's the bottom line question. We see what else is going on around the West, and we look at things like Houston and what they have added, which is astronomical. And you see the improvement from a young San Antonio team. Dallas with the ability now, I think, with Cooper Flagg, the rookie, coming in to join what will hopefully be, and it's going to take a while for Kyrie Irving to be back to full health, and then Anthony Dan. These teams are good. These teams are really loaded. The Grizzlies are good, but I don't know if the Grizzlies are even going to be competitive as far as winning the conference. I think right now they look like a play-in team at best. What are your thoughts after losing a Des Bane, drafting a Cedric Coward, picking up a Ty Jerome? Where is this team right now in the mix in the West?
Well, you also have to remember teams like San Antonio, right? The Spurs are on the rise. You don't imagine the Lakers are going to want to be bad for that long.
Clippers, Nuggets just picked up Cam Johnson, for goodness sakes.
I think that this Desmond Bane trade, and again, if people haven't read DeMichael's piece over the Commercial Appeal, they should. This is a signaling of a new era. It's the Ja and Jaren show now, right? This new CBA, team so scared of the second apron. You have two max or near max contract guys, and you try to build around them as best you can. That's what Memphis is doing. It's a reset. It's a retool. I agree with your assessment. I think they're probably the 10th best team in the Western Conference right now, and that puts them right in the play-in mix. And that's not what people are going to want to hear because, 6 or 8 months ago, we heard Zach Kleiman and Jaren Jackson Jr. talking about championship aspirations. We live in a very different world now. Desmond Bane was that good, right? He was that good of a player, and that's one of the reasons the Grizzlies got the haul that they did for him from Orlando. The Magic are competing for an NBA championship now. I'm not so sure the Grizzlies are this coming season, and they've positioned themselves to have talents like Cedric Coward, who maybe in a couple of years could be that Jalen Williams, Oklahoma City Thunder guy on a rookie contract that goes out there and does some really amazing things. He has that kind of skill set. He has that physical capability. Not many wings that are 6'6" with a 7'2" wingspan fail in the NBA. So I think that there is room for this team to achieve at a higher level than the prior era of Des, Ja, and Jaren did, but it's going to take some time. And I'm not sure that this season is going to be the year that we point at and say, Kleiman was right. So that's going to frustrate some fans. There's some people that aren't big Zach Kleiman fans. There's some folks that don't like Jaren Jackson Jr. because he doesn't rebound. To be honest with you, Greg, if John Morant can't stay on the court, none of this matters, right?
Exactly, Joe. In
an NBA where there are so many talented players like SGA and all this other stuff going on with these teams, Tyrese Halliburton, why are the Boston Celtics, aside from money, doing what they're doing? Because their best player is out for the coming season with a torn Achilles. If you don't have your dude on the court for a consistent amount of time, you're not going to be able to compete at the highest levels in the NBA. So it comes down to Ja and Jaren now. And if you can help them continue to stay on the court and continue to develop, Memphis has a chance against just about anybody in the Western Conference outside of OKC and maybe Houston to be in the mix. But as they're currently constructed, while they're more malleable, there's more versatility, they're certainly better set up for the future financially and in terms of draft picks. I think it's really hard to sit here today, starting the month of July, and say that they're better than they were 3 weeks ago, because they're not.
Joe Molinax bringing it, baby. That's real talk right there. Listen to the Locked On Grizzlies podcast as he co-hosts that with DeMichael Cole, and then also read his stuff over at Grizz Lead. Follow him on Twitter at Joe Molinax. Great catching up with you, Joe. Good stuff as always.
Appreciate you, my friend. Have a good one.
Take care. So Joe is always he's pro Grizzlies. I really appreciate what he said because that is the truth. But that's also how Kleiman is looking at it. So he's not selling you a bill of goods. And I'm not going to say I've done a complete 180 on Zach. I had called for his ouster at one time. I've given him compliments when compliments were due, and then I've also been critical. But I really like what he's done, although it does put the Grizzlies back a step. And that's the reality. I don't know if some people want to believe that. I know there are some people in the media that are caught up with stuff and they don't understand reality. But the bottom line is that teams are better suited to make a run at the West than the Grizzlies are, and the Grizzlies are probably less suited now. You don't give up a player like Des Bane and expect to be better. There are some weird noises happening right now, so I don't know what is going on, but they're still trying to hammer out all the technical issues. So again, apologies for that. It's been one of those mornings, and we appreciate it. But again, as I lose my frame of thought here, the Grizzlies have, as Zach Kleiman said, took a step back to move forward. But it's not going to happen more than likely this year. It'll be a tough battle this year to get even into the play-in. I think they're a play-in team because I think they're that talented. But Joe's right. It's all about Ja. But can you depend on Ja? Can Ja play 65 or more games? I don't know. Jaren Jackson Jr., he has to be an all-star. And he played like one last year. Yes, I've been one critical of why can't he rebound better? Shooting-wise, do you have enough? With the addition of Ty Jerome, that helps. You know, Cam Spencer getting a guarantee, that's people love Cam Spencer. He's a dog. But is he going to be in there a lot? Is he going to play a lot? Is he going to be part of the rotation? And then what about that young player, Cedric Coward? How good will he be? Will he be good immediately? Will it take some time? Will he have the type of year that Jalen Wells had this past year? It's a lot to ask for. James Gaddis Jewelers, second hour sponsor of Sports 56 Mornings. They're located at 4900 Poplar between Mendenhall and St. Nick and on the web at gaddisjewelers.com. They're open Monday through Friday 10 to 5, Saturday 10 to 4, and closed on Sunday. They are your bridal engagement and anniversary jeweler headquarters. If you're looking for that special diamond ring for that special someone, they have beautiful engagement rings, wedding rings, personally designed wedding sets. All their diamonds are independently graded and certified. They know there's a lot of competition, so they make sure there's a price point to suit everyone's budget. James has all the credentials that you want in a jeweler. He's a master jeweler, a certified appraiser. So you need something appraised, you bring it in, they will appraise that for you. He's a diamondologist. He's graded by the Gemologist Institute of America. My gosh, I'm going to go nuts here with this stuff in my ear. But for all your needs, for whether it's a beautiful birthday present for somebody, an anniversary present for a loved one, it is James Gaddis Jewelers. From beautiful watches to all different types of rings and earrings and necklaces and bracelets, one-of-a-kind estate and vintage jewelry. James Gaddis Jewelers, go check them out. Once again, 4900 Poplar between Mendenhall and St. Nick in the heart of East Memphis, on the web at gaddisjewelers.com. Okay. We can't even take breaks, so we're just going to roll right through it. Mickey Barker will join us at 9:05. We'll have at 9:25 Connor O'Gara. The schedule's completely flip-flopped today. But a couple of other things before we get into the rest of what we heard yesterday from a free agent standpoint, from a trade standpoint around the league. It was reported that Tennessee State head men's basketball coach Brian Collins, nicknamed Penny, who's a Memphian and a former coach at both Catholic High School and Kingsbury High School. He was an associate head coach at Houston High School under Mike Miller. Well, he apparently is now going to be a member of Tomas Isolo's staff. That was first reported by Jeff Goodman yesterday. He has stepped down as the coach at TSU. And let me correct myself. Penny Collins stepped down, the head coach. The assistant coach, Eric Buggs, takes over on an interim basis. He's the guy who was the associate head coach at Houston under Mike Miller and the former head coach at Catholic and Kingsbury High School. He's the Memphian. Eric Buggs taking over at Tennessee State, at least right now on an interim basis. helped Mike and that Houston team win a state championship. But Brian Penny Collins is headed to the Memphis Grizzlies, according again to Jeff Goodman. So a couple of pennies in town now. Mentioned earlier the Memphis Tigers and the news yesterday of the addition of 7-1 center Simon Majak, who is from South Sudan and played most recently in the Serbian Junior League. Gives Memphis some more size, much needed, especially after the Dane Danger waiver was denied. 7 games last year, 17.3 points, 9 rebounds per game, and 2.6 blocks. Okay, so the free agency period began, and it was a bevy of activity for the Grizzlies. And like I said earlier with Joe, it just felt like it was a free agency day all for the Grizzlies. But then, of course, the news started to come down from other teams. And there was an awful lot. So some of the highlights, I'm not going to go through all of this, and that's still fluid as far as other moves to be made by teams as free agency is just underway. Spurs going 4 years, $41 million to add Luke Cornett from the Boston Celtics. That's a lot of money, but it gives them another big. They have Victor Wembanyama. Spurs are very slowly, but really well done with the people in their front office. Greg Popovich, of course, now part of the front office, putting together a team that's going to be competitive. And Luke Cornett helps them out, certainly helps them out defensively. The Rockets, as I mentioned with Joe, they made the trade to get Kevin Durant. They add Dorian Finney-Smith, who had declined that player option from the Lakers. They get him for 4 years, $53 million. Seems like a pretty reasonable deal to get Dorian Finney-Smith. And then later in the evening, they added Clint Capella from the Atlanta Hawks. So KD, Dorian Finney-Smith, Clint Capella added to that team that already has Alperen Şengün. Jabari Smith just inked a new deal. Fred VanVleet just inked a new deal. They still have Tari Eason. They still have, what's the brothers' names? I can't hear you. Yeah, we're having so much technical difficulties today. I can't even. Thompson, right?
Oh, Amin and Asar Thompson.
There we go. Yeah, they have Amin. They have Steven Adams. I mean, that Houston team, to me right now, I know Oklahoma City's the team to beat because they have their whole team back. And again, it all has to do with the health of teams as well. I understand that. But Houston right now, whew. So they've made a lot of moves. Couple of former Grizzlies. We talked about Luke Kennard signing with Atlanta, 1 year, $11 million. Jake LaRavia, who was traded to Sacramento, he signs a 2-year deal with the Lakers, part of the Lake Show, at $12 million, so $6 million per for Jake LaRavia. Tyus Jones, he's on the move. If I could find that note. Get that for you in a second. Brooke Lopez goes to the Clippers from Milwaukee, 2 years, $18 million. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, hot commodity, goes to Atlanta, 4 years, $62 million. Kayvon Looney from Golden State ends up going to New Orleans, 2 years, $16 million. Where did Tyus go, Elijah?
Orlando.
So Orlando and Atlanta really active yesterday from the Eastern Conference. Because right now you got to look at the East and go, we can seize the moment. Boston with Tatum out. Dame Lillard out from Milwaukee. We'll see what happens with Giannis. Tyrese Halliburton gone from Indiana. Still going to be a very good team. But why not Orlando? Why not Atlanta? Looks like Jordan Clarkson's headed to New York, to the Knicks. who, by the way, according to reports, will give Mike Brown, the former Sacramento Kings head coach, Warriors assistant coach, they'll give him a second interview. I don't know if Taylor Jenkins is getting a second interview. There was also the talk about Dawn Staley, who said she's not interested. I don't know how interested the Knicks were. I mean, there'll be a day when there will be a female head coach in the NBA. There's plenty of assistants now, but there will be a head coach one day. I don't think it will be today. And Dawn's not interested. She's just kicking tail in college at South Carolina. Denver trades Michael Porter Jr. to the Nets for Cam Johnson and an unprotected 2032 first-round pick. Huge. Eli was on vacation this week. I'm sure not happy with that news. That's the guy he wanted for the Grizzlies. Now, Cam Johnson and Ty Jerome, are they similar players?
I wouldn't say so. Cam Johnson, of course, they play different positions, but Cam Johnson's more of a spot-up three-point shooter, a guy who is a combo forward, I would say. Ty Jerome, of course, a point guard. But I think Cam Johnson is a more two-way oriented player than Ty Jerome, like you said, being the offensive version of Alex Caruso, I think was a pretty good way to put it. But they do have similarities. They both shoot the three ball really well. They can both play make, so there are similarities there.
And the reason, and thank you for that, and the reason I asked you that was because he's 6'5", Ty Jerome. Now, I didn't think he was that tall. That's what he's listed at. I thought he was more like 6'2". When I saw 6'5", I thought wing, although he's played a lot of point guard. But with Scottie Pippen Jr., he is not going to be a point guard on this team. Now, he can handle the ball. I'm not saying he won't have the ball in his hands at times, and he could play alongside Scottie Pippen, both coming off the bench. But I think he could also play and will play that wing position, that small forward or big guard position if they want to go small. Wouldn't you agree? He's versatile,
I can
right?
see that. He hasn't played much two in his NBA career. He started out with the Phoenix Suns, I believe, then moved to OKC before landing with Cleveland. He played point guard in college, so he has been a point guard for pretty much all of his career. He plays better, I would say, on the ball than off the ball, so that will be interesting to see in Tomas Isolo's scheme, what he wants to do, Ty Jerome. But I think he has the capability to be an effective off-ball player, especially with how well he shoots the three.
I saw this tweeted out yesterday by John Roser from Grind City Media. Very interesting. He said, now with Jaren Jackson Jr. and his new deal to go along with Ja Morant and his contract, that will make up 46.8% of the cap next season for the Grizzlies. I mentioned that the cap goes up to $154.647 million for next season, which is a $14 million increase. But that only ranks that tandem as the 14th highest of the 16 playoff teams and their tandem. Some have obviously a big three, but when you're looking at tandems like Giannis and Dame, that's 75% of their cap. And remember, Dame's out with the Achilles. The Warriors with Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler, that's 73.5%. Celtics, Tatum and Brown, that's 69.3%. Tatum is out. So you go all the way down to number 14 of the 16 playoff teams, and there's the Grizzlies at 46.8. Right behind them is the Heat with Bam and Hero, and then the Thunder looking pretty right now with SGA and Hartenstein at 43.2. Hartenstein making more technically at the moment than Jalen Williams. But when Jalen Williams gets his bread, it's going to be a lot different. But you look at that team in that position, where they are, every player back, that's why, again, they're the team to beat next season. Not even a question. Currently 79 degrees, ladies and gentlemen. Going to get up to 90 today. Mixture of clouds and sun during the morning. Will give way to cloudy skies this afternoon. A stray shower or thunderstorm is possible. I think that's possible every single day. Partly cloudy, 70 degrees for your low tonight. only about an 8% chance of precip. And then tomorrow looks to be mostly sunny, 92 for your high, and again, a limited chance of precip. Maybe, just maybe, the thunder boomers that keep popping up day after day will be gone for a while. But I think as long as the humidity drops, which it's expected to do somewhat, that will lower the chance of those pop-up thunderstorms and those pop-up rainstorms, because last night we got hit with a bunch of them, and that's why we have had the morning we have had here at Sports 56 and 98.5 FM. We were off the air for the first hour and change, and again, our apologies, but there's not much you can do when Mother Nature rears her ugly head. Sometimes it's a beautiful head, but at times it's an ugly head. It is currently 9:02. It's the Tuesday, July 1st, 2025 edition. Greg Gaston and Elijah Seegers. Eli is off this week. As you can tell, there's no commercial breaks. This is just continuous. But I will tell you about our third hour sponsor now that we are in hour 3, and that's Jenkins Floors and More, located at 2356 Goodman Road in Horn Lake. They also have a store in Little Rock, Arkansas. They specialize in flooring and carpeting. You can call them at 662-913-7883. That's 662-913-7883. They'll come to you. They'll give you a free estimate, and they'll get the job done in a 2-week turnaround. That's their promise to you, whether they're laying down carpeting or flooring, whether it's at your home or your place of business. If you own a business, they will do that for you. And again, they do it with top-of-the-line material, and they sell it wholesale. They skip the middleman, save you lots of money in the process. So why deal with the big box store when you're just another number? At Jenkins Floors and More, they'll treat you like family because they are a family-owned and operated business. Go see them down in Horn Lake, 2356 Goodman Road, or call them at 662-913-7883. Mickey Barker is in with us. We don't have the nice open for you, Mick, because of the technical difficulties, but great to see you once again. Of course, Mickey Barker is the City of Memphis Golf Administrator and the Hall of Fame golfer from Lipscomb University. You can follow him on Twitter at Mickey Barker1. How are you?
Good morning, Greg. How are you?
I've been better. I've been better. You know, I don't know about you, and my wife gets mad every time I bring this up, but I can tell right away if it's going to be a good day or a bad day. Like, a couple of things go wrong early on. I just feel like it'll continue, and I got to get at, and she goes, you got to get out of that mindset. You got to think positive. But there are days when I go, oh man, it's smooth, and this is going to be a good day. This is going to be a smooth show. It's going to be a great day. Good things are going to happen. And it was the opposite. Today, my garage would not stay down. As I'm leaving the house, it's up, it's going down. I'm like, why is it not staying down? And then I start to roll out, and we got a lot of rain last night. It was, drenched the area. And I look outside and had a delivery that they didn't bring it to the porch. They left it outside of the garage, and it was all the box was all wet and damp and everything like that. I don't think it destroyed anything. I hope it didn't. But so then I had to go back in the house, bring that back in. So then I start to leave, and then I pop on our station, and I don't hear anything. 98.5, and then I pop on AM 560. I don't hear anything, and then I look. Do not text and drive, but I'm trying to get the word to our engineer, to everybody here at the station and of course, most of them, if not all of them, are sleeping at that point. Right? Now, Eli's pretty good. I don't know if he could have fixed that because it's still being worked on, but he's pretty good at doing some things like that. I am not technically inclined. So here I am. I'm alone. Elijah comes in. I go, Elijah, come on in here. And I don't think he knows all this stuff. He knows a lot more than I do. And so it was like, all right, then you start to text the guests and tell them what the situation is. You got to make sure you inform the people out there where we stand. I think people understand that because it happens every once in a while.
Yeah, in everybody's life, they have these days that just nothing's going right and everything's a problem. So, yeah, I think everybody understands, and you're on the air. You don't get your commercial breaks. So
No, I'm just, I'm wheeling and dealing, trying to do things, move guests in, move guests out. And, I think some people understand the hecticness of live radio, live TV. But when, you don't have the breaks are very important. Let me tell you something. Drink some water, use the facilities, if you will. Okay, so let's catch up with everything. Again, a lot of the rain, which I think is great for TPC Southwind, for the golf tournament, which will be coming up in early August. We're right around the corner.
Yeah, they're they're trying to get that golf course in world championship level, not just championship level, but, one of the biggest tournaments in the world. So they're trying to get it grown in and ready to go. So this weather is good for them, especially if it continues to rain at night, so that you can do a little bit of work during the daytime. So.
What you hope is that it's not so severe where they're knocking down trees and then you got to deal with that. But yeah, they need the rain. I don't know how much you guys need. You've had an awful lot. But again, if it's overnight, that's not a big problem.
It's not as bad. We could stand for some dry weather for a while. We've got trying to get mowed out, keep the roughs down. It would be good if we could go a week or two without rain. But, as long as it's coming at night like it did last night, that helps a little bit. And the spotty showers are better because you may be able to, one golf course may or may not get it. So it's helpful. This time of year, typically about now, it shuts off for a while. But we'll see what happens.
Do you normally get more rounds from golfers in August or in July?
Our biggest month of the year is always July. July, August are our biggest 2 months of the year, but July usually outpaces August just a little bit because the kids go back to school and starts getting busy with sports and things like that. But yeah, we count on July and August as our big 2 months.
All right, locally, you just had the Pine Hill Championship.
Yeah, we did. Scores were a little bit higher as a whole than we really thought they would be, other than Zach Smith, who shot 64, which was fantastic.
And won going away, didn't he?
Won by 5 shots, yeah. So we only, in the regular division, only had 2 players under par, which was kind of crazy. And then, again, our friend Ed McDougall won by 3 in the senior division. So some good scores out of those top few, and then the scores kind of went up from there.
Yeah, Ed's a machine, isn't he?
He is. He continues to play great golf, and he now that he's retired from teaching and coaching, he gets to devote a little bit more time to playing golf, which is just exactly what he needed to do, because he's played so much over his career. But yeah, continue at his age, continues to play great golf.
I'll put you on the spot. I think I know the answer. The greatest golfer to ever come out of Memphis. This is pro or amateur?
I would probably have to say Dr. Kerry Milikoff.
Yep, I figured you were going that way.
With all the tour wins that he had in the majors. So I believe it would have to be him.
Okay. Championship average scores by course. So these are you had the championships at Audubon, Galloway, Pine Hill, and Fox Meadows. Right, with Pine Hill coming this past weekend. Championship average scores. Audubon, 80.70. Again, these are average scores. Fox Meadows, 80.79. Pine Hill, 77.57. Galloway, 75.28. So, to me, that means Galloway was played the easiest.
Plays the easiest, yeah.
And Fox Meadows played the hardest. Are you surprised with all the changes to Audubon that Fox Meadows still played harder?
When we were doing these averages yesterday, I was glancing at the Pine Hill Championship, I thought Pine Hill's going to come in as the hardest. But I was very surprised about Fox outpacing or being a little bit harder than Audubon. Yeah, that was surprising.
Now, how much of that has to do with like the conditions for those days? It's a 2-day or a 1 day?
One day rounds.
Yeah,
right,
you could have a lot of wind one day, maybe moisture on the course. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why it could be elevated, the scores, right?
And you could have fewer players in one event or more players in another. You could have some guys that really struggled, that had some abnormally high scores.
I didn't play in any of them, Mickey. Do not point your finger at me.
But and that Fox Meadows averages from 2024. We haven't had the Fox Meadows championship for this year yet. But that goes back to last year. It was a very hot, normal golf day in the summer at Fox Meadows last year. So, the conditions were somewhat similar. We didn't have rain on any of these days. So it's pretty apples to apples in these comparisons, but not surprising that Galloway was the lowest score. Most people play their best rounds at Galloway. I think that's one of the reasons it's so popular, is that people can play well at Galloway.
Overton Park Junior Open, that'll be coming up July 14th through the 17th. You've already had a ton sign up How many spots are available?
Yeah, there's 200 spots available. So we're over 170. We're 174 signed up as of yesterday. So we got just a few spots left. And so if your child is wanting to play, you're 7 years old to 16 years old, and you want to play in that great tournament, you need to get signed up right away.
Other stuff that's happening locally that we need to talk about?
Lots of stuff going on. This is the golf time of the year. Lots of corporate outings going on at our different golf courses. All of our courses are in great shape. We're getting past the airification and growing those in. So things are really rolling right now. MemphisPublicLinks.com has everything available right there.
Okay, let's talk about professional golf. And before too long, it'll be the Open Championship that'll be taking place. I got just music rolling through my ears. There's a lot going on right now. Okay. We got some big events coming up, but they'll be overseas. Next week, this upcoming week, it's the John Deere. Last week, it was the Rocket Mortgage. We'll talk about that in a second. But the point I'm trying to make is this. I read a story about there was a little bit of criticism about the PGA Tour. And what they said was that they've missed their opportunity to take advantage of the slowest time in sports, and that's the month of July. Although Wimbledon's going on, I just mentioned the Open Championship will be going on. All right, we got smaller tournaments, non-signature events. The last one was the Travelers.
Right.
So this article said, why have all the elevated tournaments wrap up before July, even though you do have a major, which you have to wake up early to watch and that kind of stuff? Why don't you have some of those events in July when there's nothing going on? It's the dog days of baseball. It's before NFL camps open up, and even when they open up, nobody's really thrilled about NFL camps. And so that they're missing the boat on that. Then, of course, you hit August and you have the FedEx Cup playoffs. Do you like the schedule, or do they have something? Is that something that makes sense of having some elevated events going into July and going into the two tournaments that they'll have over there? What, the Scottish Open?
And the Irish Open.
The Irish Open, yeah.
I kind of like it. I think these guys, it's been so busy leading up to this. You got the Memorial, you got the U.S. Open, you got a lot of big events. May, June are really filled with big events. And then these guys are going to start traveling overseas to play the Irish Open, Scottish Open. I don't have a problem with having the non-elevated events first part of July. It's kind of a little bit of a downtime. I think you're seeing that's when families go on vacation, so people are probably watching less golf on television. So to me, it's a good time to have a little bit of a downtime. Obviously the people with the Rocket Mortgage and the John Deere, they don't think of it as a downtime. But some great events, and then you jump into the Open Championship, or as I call it, the British Open Championship still. And then you're right into the playoffs starting in August.
Yeah, look, I think the schedule's perfect the way it is. But certainly I can understand what they're saying, because even though they're big, they're overseas. And here in the States, we got the Rocket, although there was some names in the Rocket, the John Deere. There'll be a few names in the John Deere. Basically, they're in there, some names, because they're trying to get into the top 70.
Right.
For the FedEx Cup playoffs. Ricky Fowler, who's just outside looking in, and some others who have struggled, like a Wyndham Clark. Max Homa is really down on the list. So.
And they're going to be, some of those guys are trying to get in contention to make the Ryder Cup. If you're in the 30th spot, you're going to be playing as much as you possibly can to try to move up closer to one of those picks.
That's true, but I don't think anybody that far down is going to be a Ryder Cup candidate.
Yeah, unless you win. You could possibly win. Say you won.
Like a couple of events coming in.
Right.
You're red hot. Maybe.
You're red hot,
yeah.
and you have that, with 6 picks, you don't have to take the 11th and 12th spots. You could jump down as far as you wanted.
At the Rocket, you had a guy named Aldrich Potgieter.
Yeah.
He wins in a playoff. There was a 5-hole playoff. Now, it started with 3 guys, and then Chris Kirk was eliminated, and Potgieter ends up winning. It doesn't slide off the tongue, pot heater. And when you look how it's spelled, you might not get pot heater out of that. But the guy from South Africa went on and he won in front of his father who was there. That was always great. You sent me some notes on this tournament. Or was this on pot heater?
This is on pot geeter. Yeah.
Okay, his average drive was 326 yards.
That's on tour. That's not just this week.
Okay.
That's his normal. He's 6 yards longer than Rory McIlroy.
And he's 26 yards longer than the tour average.
Yeah.
So the tour average is right at 300.
Right.
And he's at 326.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, he's got a little pot belly.
Yeah,
he's not a huge guy.
He was a wrestler growing up.
So he's strong.
He's really, really strong. He just hammers the golf ball. Really heavy clubs, 190 plus average club head speed. I mean, that's crazy.
The average ball speed, is...
I'm sorry, ball speed, over 190 miles per hour.
And the tour average is 174.
Right.
What is a regular Joe usually drive the ball, and usually what is his average ball speed at?
Well, I mean, at 56 years old, I hit it, 270, 280, somewhere in there,
Jeez.
depending on the how much the ball rolls, how warm it is, and my ball speed is right around 150 to 152, somewhere in that neighborhood. So if that tells you anything.
Well, you're not an average guy. You're a Hall of Fame golfer, for goodness sakes. But you're a little guy. You're not a big guy. And so it just, the one thing of golf that I'm most flabbergasted about is that I might not be tall, but I'm strong.
Right.
I lift weights. I'm big as far as I'm broad. And I can't use that as my advantage because I really don't know what I'm not doing. And I watch a guy, I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, is Ben On the one who goes back and basically stops, like really easy, pauses?
Well, he's one of he a little bit. Hideki Matsuyama, he has a big pause at the top of his golf swing, and he's one of the longer drivers out there.
Yeah, so I try to go back as slow as I can. And as long as I go back slow through it and keep my head down, I'll hit it nice, but it's not even going to be close to 280. So I'm trying to figure out how I can get more ball speed with my driver, yet be able to keep my head down and not come up and stay through it. Is it just because I'm so old that my body doesn't move that way anymore?
No, not at all. And I think a lot of the getting distance has to do with what they call smash factor, and that's how you hit the golf ball in the center of the club face.
Right.
And so right now, and as your average golfer, being able to hit the ball in the center of the club face more often will lead to a lot more distance.
I think the other thing I do is I tee it low, because if I tee it high, I'll go under it. I need to do a better job of hitting up on the ball.
That's correct. On the drivers, the guys now, most everybody hits up on it, trying to get as much launch. You get into a lot of specifics, but you want to get the launch angle somewhere between 11 and 14 so that you can maximize your carry with as little spin as possible so it stays in the air. It's just a whole lot of things to that the guys on tour that work on it all day, every day, they can maximize that. Whereas the average golfer like yourself or the guys that are playing our courses on the weekends, they have to work for a living, and so they don't get to spend 8 hours a day practicing this.
Well, I know you're a busy man, but I'm going to put you on the spot. You need to help me with that, because right now, irons, you help me out with that. I'm really hitting the irons pretty well. Once in a while, I won't hit it on the sweet spot, but man, it's just amazing when you have a good set of equipment and you hit it on that sweet spot, it just carries, and the distance is more than what you're normally hitting.
And that's what brings everybody back, is that they may shoot 120, but they have that one or two shots that are dead in the center of the club face, and they were like, that's why I keep coming.
Yeah, I've been consistently now getting to under 90, like 88, 87, 86, but it's to take that next step.
Right.
And I still have the issues with my finger, my twice operated on finger, which really affects my putting. But I just love the game, and I know you folks out there listening love the game as well. So make sure that you check out and head to, when you're ready to go out and play golf, any of the great city courses here in Memphis. We have a number of them, and it's real easy for them to make tee times.
Absolutely. MemphisPublicLinks.com, and go right there. You can book your tee time. We have the new driving ranges at Audubon and at Pine Hill. Great place to practice. You have the 6-hole short course at Audubon. That's where the strokes are saved. Somebody that's shooting like yourself, 84, 85, 86, you work on your short game for 2 weeks straight, and I promise that you'll cut 5 or 6 shots out of your score.
He's Mickey Barker. He's the golf administrator for the city of Memphis, the Hall of Fame golfer from Lipscomb University. You can follow him on Twitter at MickeyBarker1. Have a great week, Mickey.
Thanks, Greg. Hope
Thank you
things
very
get
much.
better.
Oh, we appreciate it. Thank you so much. One of those days. The Mick joining us here on the program. We'll continue right on through. Connor O'Gara is going to join us in just a second. A lot of college football news. First of all, Texas State makes it official to the Pac-12. Also, we were talking yesterday about Jake Ratzlaff, the quarterback from BYU, who is facing a 7-game suspension for violating the school's conduct code, is going to transfer, honor code, not conduct code. He is facing now, he is not going to have to face any legal problems because the civil lawsuit that accuses Ratzlaff of rape has been dismissed. So that came yesterday after we talked about that on the show. And now he's still going to transfer because of this honor code. We'll talk to Connor O'Gara about that. So that's going on. And then more from Big Ten Commissioner Tony Batiti, who was doing an interview with Joel Klatten saying, look, they're standing by that 4-4-2-2-1 format that they would like for the college football playoff once the new deal is made, moving forward from 2026 and beyond. He said, we are not asking to be handed anything. We want to create incentive for schools to schedule tougher non-conference games. So some interesting things going on there. Is it a battle between the Big Ten and the SEC? Well, we'll get the thoughts of our good buddy Connor O'Gara. He joins us every other Tuesday, the senior national columnist for Saturday Down South. He's the host of the Saturday Down South podcast. You can follow him on Twitter at CJ O'Gara. Apologies, Connor. We don't have the open because not much is working, but at least we're on the air right now. How are you?
That's all that matters. And, we can go without probably, 12 seconds of Thunderstruck. I think, the people that, if you really missed that, just hum it along in your head. But just glad to hear that you guys are back on the air after what I'm sure was a frustrating morning.
How appropriate that your music is Thunderstruck and we got struck by thunder, by lightning.
I didn't draw it up that way. We've had this. I think we've had the same intro for my regular appearances for 6 years now or something like that. So that's a long time coming. It was probably bound to go down this way at some point. Just go figure. It was one of the days that I came on.
Exactly. All right, so we got a lot to get into. We got the SEC Media Days are just a couple of weeks away, and you'll be joining us from Charlotte. First of all, do you like that they moved it to Charlotte?
No, it's in Atlanta.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking of the American Conference. My mind shot. My bad. Atlanta. You obviously have Atlanta. You have Nashville. You have Birmingham. Do you like that it's being moved around the way it has been over the years now?
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's no big deal. Look, Charlotte would be great too. I like going to Charlotte. I haven't been in a minute since went to SEC Network headquarters a few years back, but yeah, look, moving it around is just changing the conversation. And for a long time, the Big Ten, I think, has really struggled with that, of getting people to actually care about Big Ten Media Days. It seems like the event that they were trying to quiet instead of put a spotlight on, which is kind of defeats the entire purpose of Big Ten Media Days. Mm-hmm. And that's why they're having it in Vegas this year. They're taking a page out of the SEC playbook. And as great as it was, having SEC Media Days in Hoover every single year in between a couple of Belks. Look, there's a need for the entire conference, which is now very wide sprawling, to experience SEC Media Days. So yeah, we're back in Atlanta. I think third time in the last 7 years, 8 years that we're going to Atlanta. So move the thing around every single year, get everybody to to feel like they get a piece of SEC Media Days.
Okay, you probably heard me talking about Petitti, what he had to say, the Big Ten commissioner. Is there a rift with Petitti and Sankey with the Big Ten and the SEC?
I don't know if there's a rift. There's just a very different approach. Petitti looks like he is taking the back seat to Greg Sankey being in the driver's seat, at least when it comes to these conversations. That's not to say that he is the only one making these decisions, but he's clearly been the most vocal about this, and you didn't really hear a lot from Tony Petitti during that time in which Greg Sankey is handing out pamphlets showing why the SEC gauntlet is a gauntlet like no other. But it's interesting to hear Tony Petitti tell Joel Klatt, like, we're trying to get Big Ten teams to schedule tougher non-conference games. And I'll give the Big Ten credit for this. It's finally made this adjustment over time that it needed to, of realizing, hey, look, if the SEC is not going to have a 9-game conference schedule, then you're allowed to do something about it. You're allowed to create a schedule that is best for the college football playoff. And, the Big Ten did not go to a 9-game conference schedule to help itself for the college football playoff back when it did that in 2016. It did that to make more money. And so this holier-than-art-thou approach that the Big Ten has had for so many years, well, we play 9-game conference schedules, and we have the tougher schedule than the SEC. It's like, no, you just did that for money. You did that for money, and you hoped the SEC would do the same. They didn't, and you didn't reap the rewards that you hoped that you would. Mm-hmm. So to me, like, you can make all the money in the world from doing that, but this still comes down to the playoff, and that's what the Big Ten and SEC are trying to figure out, how to give themselves the best possible path for whatever playoff iteration awaits us in 2026.
What's your best guess on what it'll end up being?
I still think we're going to expand because the money's too good not to. And at a time right now where literally today is the first day of the new era of college athletics, and while I'm a bit bored to tears with talking about that stuff, it is the new reality that we're living in. And so everybody's looking for more ways to be able to kind of maximize this. I mean, we all pointed and laughed at Tennessee last year when Tennessee comes out with this 10% talent fee that it's charging on top of its season tickets, for Tennessee football games. And it's just trying to find new ways to cover these expenses in ways that they haven't had to in years past with the way that these budgets are now being constructed. So, the way that they're going to make more money off the college football playoff is expansion. And getting to this place is clearly not going to be easy because they have, 4 months to be able to come up with this plan for 2026 before that deadline hits in December. But I think we'll get to a 16-team playoff. If I had to guess, I think we will get there, and a 5-11 model would be my best guess. But who knows with this and the way that it's played out so far, because Lord knows we've had plenty of twists and turns.
Outside of the SEC, we have the story from BYU, which is quite interesting with Jake Retzlaff. He, first of all, is unique. Here's a young Jewish man going into Mormon territory, playing quarterback, starring for that team with 1 year of eligibility, ready to come back, and then the allegations come out about basically sexual assault, rape. The civil lawsuit yesterday dismissed, but already Retzlaff and his representation admitted to premarital sex with a young lady, and that violates the honor code in Provo. It's like a movie. And so now he's looking for a new home for one final year. What is your thoughts, and what are the prospects of where he may land?
That's a good question, because he's not going somewhere to be able to play immediately, at least not at the power conference level this year. I mean, like, I would be stunned if there were some sort of exception that allowed him to be able to do that, because if you transfer right now, like, you're going to have to sit a year if you're not part of this window, I believe, the way that it shapes up. So, yeah, not necessarily surprising to see this happen. It's a weird situation because this happened in November of 2023. And the irony is that he became one of the breakout stars in college football last year for a BYU team that people were surprised that they were as relevant as long as they were last year. And there were a lot of stories, like College Game Day did the BYU story.
Right.
And that, like, this is all happening behind the scenes. Or at least this was known that this sort of violation had happened, and of course it didn't come to light until a lot more recently this off season. But I got to think that he'll have a market, but it's not going to be, I don't think, at least at the power conference level, to be able to play this year. And I don't know if he could bend the system to play at an FCS school this year and then transfer to a power conference school next year after this Diego Pavia thing with the extra eligibility. Like, who knows how this works anymore? I don't even know if the NCAA knows how this works anymore. But what I would feel confident saying is that I don't expect to see Jake Retzlaff transfer to a power conference school to be able to play immediately. I'd be stunned if he just showed up at a fall camp somewhere of some quarterback needy team and was like, "Hey, sign me up. Let me be the starting quarterback somewhere." That just doesn't seem like it's imminent.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm trying to find somewhere in any story what the deal is about immediate eligibility, and I would imagine that he's past that time. Like, he has to sit out a year, but I don't know anymore. So that's why I'm curious. I thought maybe you would know whether or not he could. I think you're right. I mean, I would imagine most teams, although some have battles going on and will have battles going on in camp in August, they're pretty much set on their quarterbacks. Now, could there be a team that, like, oh no, we could use that guy? Maybe, but I can't imagine that he would be eligible to play right away. So if I see anything different, and Elijah, check that for me, but I don't see how he could be eligible. So he'd have to sit out a year and then play that final year next season, unless, again, something wacky. And, in this day and age, Connor, there's a lot of wackiness. So who knows? The Ross Dellinger story from yesterday about Danny White and what he had to say. Did you, first of all, read that story? And what is your take on that?
Tell me what you're referring to, because my mind is now on the 10% last year.
Okay, so White revealed a collective bargaining proposal that he's shared with colleagues now for a couple of years. The model creates a national organization to employ and unionize college athletes. Are we heading down that road? And we're just starting revenue sharing. I mean, like today, revenue sharing officially starts. But are we heading down that road where these student athletes, which I can't believe I still am going to refer to them as student athletes, that they are going to be employees and then they'll be able to unionize and collectively bargain?
Yeah, but I think we're a ways away from that. I mean, I do think it'll eventually happen, but there are a lot of hurdles that would have to be overcome for that, and there's a reason why the federal government has been telling the NCAA, like, hey, this whole business model that you've created is garbage for all these years, and you can't treat them like this, and then also be like, oh wait, but they're and then they're not going to be employees. Like, I don't really know how all that's going to go down with not being employees but having a union. Mm-hmm. I would think those two things to collectively bargain are one of the same. But I do think that as much as we would be frustrated with some of those developments of what a union would create, it also would create some sort of stability for what you're signing up for with an NIL deal. And if you are leaving a school, then what does your contract say based on the way that your union is collectively bargained? Are you playing in these bowl games? What is the union and any sort of collective bargaining agreement say about playing in the college football playoff? I mean, Tennessee dealt with that situation last year, apparently, where guys are trying to renegotiate before they get into the playoff and hey, this isn't what we agreed on, when really that's not the point of the sport or what all of this was supposed to be about. So that's a word salad answer, because honestly, I have no idea when we're going to get there. I really don't. And honestly, I'll be 100% honest. I think fans are really sick of hearing about this. I think they're absolutely sick of hearing about all these different changes to their sport and how they're holding out for this, and all the student athlete model is going to look different in 2 years from now. Call me when it happens. Call me when there's actually something tangible that's being put forth by the athletes themselves, and not just administrators behind the scenes saying, oh, this is what it could look like, because Lord knows they're going to be acting in their own best interest anyways. And that's not how any union ever has,
yes.
Think about a professional sports organization. If Major League Baseball, if the people that formed that union, it was the owners, no, that's not how this is going to work. So to me, it's going to be more interesting when we see some actual real player movement and there's something behind that.
I am 100% with you. Fans are certainly sick of it. I'm sick of asking, but when I bring experts on like yourself, I'm going to get your opinion, but I'm sick of talking about it. I just bring on the games, man. For goodness sakes, bring on the darn games.
Amen.
All right. Speaking of the speaking of the games, and again, as I mentioned, SEC Media Days in a couple of weeks, and you'll be in Atlanta. Brett Norsworthy from our station will be there as well. We always look forward to everything that comes out of it. It's a fun 4 days. So Steve Spurrier, who's not a part of that anymore, but he's always got some interesting things to say. And so recently, I guess on a podcast or whatever, he talked about Arch Manning and Texas. I'm sure you caught this. And I'm just paraphrasing now in a roundabout way. He's basically saying, like, why are you giving him the Heisman and giving Texas the SEC title and maybe a national championship? Like, what has he proven yet? I mean, he couldn't even beat out yours last year, who's a 7th-round pick in the NFL draft. Is Steve just being Steve? Is there something to it? Maybe that we're assuming too much about Arch in Texas?
So yeah, he said this on another duly noted podcast with my guy Pat Dooley, who I had on my show last week, actually, ironically enough.
Oh wow! Okay.
Pat Dooley does great work. I mean, he's been covering all things Florida since 1987. Like, this is somebody who is very tight with Spurrier, and Spurrier opens up with him on a weekly basis. He goes on a show every Monday, and one of the points that he was kind of hammering home was the same thing that Aaron Murray said a couple of months ago on Sirius, talking about how, like, we have crowned Arch Manning in a way that I'm not sure that we've ever crowned someone, because, and maybe there's an example of this. I can't remember a time in which people were putting someone as a number one in mock drafts who has not been a full-time starter yet. Now, he got his handful of starts in relief of Quinn Ewers, but like the preemptive jumping of the gun for Arch Manning is kind of off the charts. I mean, it really is. I mean, Feinbaum said today on Get Up, like, he's the best quarterback we've had come through since 2006 Tebow. Like, those are the conversations that people are already willing to have. And where I will push back, because I think Arch is really good. I have Arch starting off as my number 4 quarterback in the SEC, just because I think that the mobility, the arm strength, the size is all absolutely there, and the floor is so high in that Steve Sarkisian offense that you just feel like he's going to do really good things. Why he didn't play ahead of Quinn Ewers, though, is it's kind of a frustrating subject, because it's almost like the Justin Fields, Jake Fromm thing all over again, and the context is just totally lost on who these players were. Like, when Quinn Ewers got hurt last year, he gets hurt right after the Michigan game. He was brilliant in that game up in Ann Arbor against the defending national champs, and there was no sort of conversation about, like, hey, why isn't Arch Manning starting over Quinn Ewers? Like, Quinn Ewers was coming off of a playoff berth, and he was incredible. And now fast forward to when Quinn Ewers, is able to come back from his injury. Of course he's going to retain the starting job. And then he gets hurt again with the ankle later in the season, and they were bringing in Arch for situations. But he wasn't going to all of a sudden upseat Quinn Ewers as Texas is nearing a college football playoff run for the second consecutive year. So, to me, I think it lacks a little bit of context. When Arch was the third-string quarterback as a true freshman, don't forget about Malik Murphy. So I do push back on people that are saying, like, oh, if he's this good, then why didn't he start ahead of Quinn Ewers? We have hindsight to say, like, oh, well, that should have happened because he was a 7th-round guy. It lacks too much context for me.
Yeah, the old head coach. He's only going to say something to stir things up. Connor O'Gara joining us on the Sissy's Log Cabin guest line. A few more minutes with Connor. Okay, you mentioned right there when you said you have him 4th. I assume you got Nussmeier, Lagway?
That's correct. And then who's the other one?
Who's the other one? Oh, Sellers.
That's correct. And in that exact order, I have Nuss, Sellers, and then Lagway, and then Arch. And I initially had Lagway at 2, and I switched spots with Sellers just because the Lagway shoulder injury that prevented him from throwing in the spring, and he didn't get to throw until May. That does have me a little bit worried, just a little bit worried for someone that's entering year 2. But yeah, look, the SEC quarterback picture is fascinating because I think you can make a case that quarterback depth is at a better place than it was last year, but quarterback play was down. It was disappointing last year in the SEC with all these big headliner names. Jackson Dart was kind of the only one that sort of lived up to the billing, and even he had really tough moments down the stretch in Ole Miss's 3 losses. And I would say that he didn't really necessarily, maximize the potential that some thought he had. So I do think that quarterback play in the SEC this year has guys that are just loaded with Heisman possibilities. And people are talking about John Mateer. I had Jake Dickert on the podcast, his former coach at Washington State, who's like, he's the best player in college football coming back this year. And there's like, whoa, that's the expectation for him at Oklahoma. So, you can go in a lot of different ways with that. I'm sure people will be going on a lot of different ways at SEC Media Days in a couple of weeks.
All right, last topic for you. This is one that Eli and I both are disagree. Excuse me. We don't agree. We disagree on this one. What is your take on, and I forget who brought this up, but the possibility of collegiate athletes and members of staffs being able to gamble on professional sports?
Yeah, I really do not care. If they want to do that, that's fine.
Okay, so you don't have a problem. You don't have a problem.
Yeah,
because Eli's like that. I think it's a problem. Why do it? Why allow it? Like so we allow them to become compulsive gamblers. Go ahead. I mean, what's the point of what do they get out of it? Allowing them to do that. Like, why can't 4 years or whatever? Just don't gamble.
Then what? Then should they not be allowed to drink? Should they not be allowed to go to nightclubs? Like, what else can you say definitively that they shouldn't?
Well,
you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, but I would say that they play in that arena. They play, even though they're not playing professional sports, they still play in that arena of sports that is gambled on. I don't believe FanDuel has high school lines or anything like that, so it's college and professional, and they're one step away from that professional ranks. Playing at the collegiate level, why even give them a chance to, who knows who they know? And I mean, we got another situation in the NBA now that they're looking into. Who's it? Malik Beasley? Yeah, with Malik Beasley.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that would happen, but why open up that door? So no, I guess you agree with Eli, but to me, it's just why do it now? But that's a good point you make, Connor, about. Well, then what are you going to stop them from drinking when they're legal at 21 and things of that nature? So I don't know. I mean, to me, it's why? There's so many other things to worry about. It's why really have to worry about allowing these guys? Is there that much of an outcry from these athletes? We have to gamble. Let us gamble. So I don't know. I just thought. I thought it was an interesting topic when it came up, and I'm sure it'll cause some little bit of friction on both sides. I think whether it's passed or not passed.
There's murky things too with fantasy sports, or if you're doing that for money, if you're doing an NCAA tournament pool for money, and you're a college athlete, where exactly what does the line look like, especially now that it's being blurred, and there are daily fantasy things as well that people are getting into, and how much does that get into that space where daily fantasy is basically props, the way that it sets up.
Yes.
And then what can you police versus what can't you? People are always going to kind of bend the rules to sort of satisfy whatever need that they might have. So I come at it more from that standpoint. Obviously I wouldn't want my star player sitting around just looking at his bets every single night.
Exactly.
That's how he spends his free time. I would agree with you on that, but really tough thing to govern, and really tough thing to kind of define what those lines are.
He is Connor O'Gara, senior national columnist for Saturday Down South, host of the Saturday Down South podcast. It is a terrific podcast, folks. Follow him on Twitter at CJ O'Gara. So we will talk to you next time. It'll be day 2 of SEC Media Days from Atlanta. We look forward to that.
Double thunderstruck next time. That's all I ask for.
Thanks, Connor.
Thanks, man.
Oh, my gosh. All right, we continue right along. We got 15 more minutes. And then it'll be interesting when I hand the baton off to Brian Dacus, who will have to jump in the seat immediately and continue with the show while you'll be there. Actually, you could take over while Brian can get adjusted here. It's been a wild morning. The weather last night struck us and knocked us off the air. We didn't get on to about 8:15, so we've been playing catch-up pretty much this entire show. But we thank our guests, Joe Mullinax on the Grizzlies, Connor O'Gara on college football, and, of course, the Mickey Barker on golf. So final 15 minutes. I want to get back into free agency and the Grizzlies. So this morning at 9:02 Central, and I didn't see this again because some things are working, some things aren't. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has agreed to a 4-year, $285 million Supermax contract extension with the Thunder through 2030-31. The extension gives Gilgeous-Alexander the largest annual salary for a player in NBA history. Your thoughts on SGA and just the position that Oklahoma City's in?
Yeah, I think especially after the year that he's had, hard not to give him that, especially whenever it's available for him. He is in the prime of his career, won his first championship at 26 years old, which is younger than a lot of the greats of the game have done. So with OKC still on the upward trail with their future being as bright as anybody's, might as well go ahead and lock him down. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to be paying one guy, but when it's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I think it's warranted.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, is there any... I don't know off the top of my head how many situations we've had where a player that had qualified for the max didn't get the max. Do you know of any off the top of your head?
The only one I can think of is Jalen Brunson. Him deciding to take a pay cut for the other guys on the Knicks to be able to get paid as well. That's the only one I can think of, and I think that was only it ended up being like a $10 million pay cut over 4 years. So it wasn't a whole lot of money in comparison to what he would have been making at least. That's the only one I can think of, though.
Okay, so let's go over some of these moves that have been made or at least announced. They include D'Angelo Russell, who apparently will sign with Dallas, 2 years, $13 million. So Dallas, we know what they're putting together. It's all about the health of the Mavericks. Kyrie Irving, who again is expected to miss some time at the start of the year, I believe. Anthony Davis, now a rookie in Cooper Flagg. How does Russell fit into Dallas?
Yeah, he can do a lot of the same things that Kyrie Irving can do in terms of shot creation and playmaking. Obviously, Kyrie Irving, at this point of his career, does that to a better level than D'Angelo Russell. But we've seen D'Angelo Russell in winning situations before with the Los Angeles Lakers. And even before that in Minnesota, he was a pretty good, steady guard. He is an inconsistent shooter at times, especially come playoff time. But this is going to be a situation where I think it's just kind of like a holdover, where as long as D'Angelo Russell can hold serve until Kyrie Irving is ready to come back, then I think that's going to be mighty fine with the Dallas Mavericks. And for the money they were able to get him on, I think it's a good deal.
The Bucks have signed Gary Trent Jr., so he's back. The free agent gets a 2-year, $7.5 million deal and a player option. So Gary Trent Jr. back. Bobby Portis back. Taurean Prince has agreed to a 2-year, $7.1 million deal to return to Milwaukee, so he's back. So they get the players back that were expected to return. You're not Giannis, I'm not Giannis, but I wonder what Giannis is thinking right now. Am I missing anybody so far? Has Milwaukee made any sort of splash to try to replace the brilliant scoring that they would get from Damian Lillard, who will be out for presumably the year?
They have not gone out and gotten anybody, but they are currently the favorites to land DeAndre Ayton, so I think that's noteworthy.
So they are the favorites. They lose Brook Lopez, right? So they have to replace the center. Okay. The Lakers, at first I thought they were going to get Cornette, and then I thought maybe Ayton, which I guess is still a possibility. But they haven't yet filled that need. If they don't get Ayton, or maybe don't want Ayton, because I heard you and Brian talking about it yesterday, that maybe it doesn't fit that system that they want to run. Who is a center that's out there right now that you think that the Lakers will go after? And look, LeBron's not going anywhere. All that talk yesterday, LeBron is looking at the situation and all that. He ain't leaving his son, I'm telling you. He's not leaving his son. He'd probably demand some kind of trade where it's a package deal where Bronny's part of the trade. But who makes sense as far as the center position?
Yeah, the market is pretty bare now. I would say the best fit for the best talent as well would be Andre Drummond at this point, where ideally you would not want Andre Drummond to be your starting center at this stage of his career. But with what's available on the free agent market at least, Andre Drummond might be your best option now. I think that they'll end up trading for somebody still, or maybe signing and trading. But free agency-wise, I think that's the guy.
But a trade maybe with Dallas makes sense, doesn't it? They've
Yeah,
already
Gafford.
Yeah, they've already made a trade, pretty big one, with Luka Doncic and Anthony Davis. But look at who they have as far as centers with Dallas, bigs with Dallas. from Gafford and Lively, and Washington's still a pretty big guy, but at Anthony Davis. So there's a plethora of bigs. Lakers need it. I don't know, maybe something will happen as far as a trade is concerned. Jordan Clarkson mentioned this earlier. It looks like he is going to end up with the New York Knicks. So just depth for that New York Knicks team. The most important thing right now for the Knicks is who's going to coach them. And as I said, Mike Brown, according to reports, is getting a second interview. I think he could do a lot worse than Mike Brown, but it didn't work out in Sacramento. I was a little surprised with some of the talent that the Kings had. I like Brown a lot. I thought he would have success. He did not.
I mean, he was the coach of the year in 2023. That year was a great year for the Kings, and if you think about it, they won 49 games that year and were the 3 seed. The very next year, they only lost 3 more games and were the 10 seed in the Western Conference, just to show how much better the Western Conference has gotten over the past few years.
So were they quick on the trigger with him? Premature?
I think so.
Mason Plumlee, 1 year, $3.6 million deal with Charlotte. We mentioned the former Grizz Luke Kennard heads to Atlanta, the Hawks, and the Orlando Magic. 2 teams to keep an eye on in the Eastern Conference as they have loaded up. Here's a guy I'm not familiar with. Maybe you are. Nigel Hayes-Davis from the 2025 EuroLeague Championship team. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Also a Turkish Cup champion and MVP. Fully guaranteed deal with the Suns. I don't know. Never heard of the guy.
I know he played college at Wisconsin, and he was in college, I think, like 7 or 8 years ago. So he's been playing overseas professionally for a little while now. Interesting to see him get a guaranteed contract at this stage of his career.
Mentioned earlier, Tyus Jones, who's with the Suns, former Grizzly. He's going to Orlando. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is going to, it looks like, Atlanta, right? And that was a trade with Minnesota. Luka Garza signs with Boston. Brooke Lopez, we mentioned, gets 2 years, $18 million to go to the Clippers. Karis LeVert, 2 years, $20 million with the Pistons. Again, the Rockets making the biggest splash. They trade for KD. They go out and sign Dorian Finney-Smith, and then they pick up Clint Capella on a 3-year, $21.5 million deal. Houston has positioned themselves with Thompson. We went through this whole list earlier with Şengün, with Jabari Smith, with Van Vliet, with Eason, with Thompson. Steven Adams is still on that team. I think they're better off without Dylan Brooks. That is a team right now I would say is the best team equipped to knock off Oklahoma City. Would you agree or disagree?
I would 100% agree at this point. I think that the Denver Nuggets acquiring Cam Johnson is a strong third contender for that as well. But with all that Houston has done over the past few weeks, I just think they've had an outstanding offseason. I would give them an A+ for all the moves they've made.
Yeah, and Denver also got Bruce Brown back, so good bench strength with Brown. He's a scorer, 1-year deal. Spent last season with the Raptors and then the Pelicans. So they get Cam Johnson. Michael Porter Jr., certainly had his success there, but I think it's a great deal. I hopefully for Jokic's sake, he's happy with that. Jokic is, he's not going anywhere. But yeah, I think so far what Denver has done is really strong. Kevin Porter Jr., by the way, another guy back with Milwaukee. So they're retaining all those players, but is it enough to satisfy Giannis? And again, Giannis, he hasn't seemed to have made any kind of waves that he wants out. We'll see when it's all said and done. D'Angelo Russell going to Dallas. We talked about him, 2 years, $13 million. Trey Jones, 3 years, $24 million to return to the Chicago Bulls. And another former Grizzly, Jake LaRavia, is headed to Tinseltown. Lakers, 2 years, $12 million. Okay, so recapping with the Grizzlies. Again, a lot went on yesterday. Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to have his new deal, 5 years, $240 million. They still have to figure out the financial situation to pay for all that, and Cole Anthony will be not staying long in Memphis, in fact, not staying at all. But what will they do with that $20 million, which they need to help facilitate a trade or something to, again, use that for Jaren Jackson Jr. So Cole Anthony will not be a part of the team, but again, that still has to be ironed out, those details. Cam Spencer is now part of the 15-man, 2 years, $4.5 million. He goes from a two-way player. And Santi Aldama is coming back, 3 years, $52.5 million. I like Santi Aldama. There's a lot of things I like about Santi. He needs to be better man-to-man defender. He's a good rebounder, and he's a fairly good shot-altering big, but he's slow with his feet. But they like him, and they went out and got him. And then Ty Jerome, the big pickup for the Grizzlies, who will be a versatile player, who could play some point, can play some two, maybe even when you go small play, a little small forward. He's 6'5". He shoots the three ball extremely well. I thought he was really, really good for Cleveland coming off the bench. He'll come off the bench for Memphis. Good pickup. But now, do they have anything else? Are they going to address the big with a two-way? Is that what they're going to do? Salt Lake City, here come the Grizzlies. Summer League begins on Saturday, on the 5th. And then they head out to Vegas from Salt Lake City. July 10th through the 20th is Summer League in Las Vegas. So a lot going on. I'm sure there'll be a lot more news coming up this week. One other NBA note, Sam Presti, who did such a great job with Oklahoma City, said Monday that it's almost insulting for the NBA to argue there's no correlation between the number of games and the player loads and how frequently the players are getting hurt. So Sam Presti, a guy who's been around for a long, long time, making his presence felt as far as that ongoing issue. The problem is I don't see them ever cutting down the amount of games. In fact, maybe even going the other way with additional games. Hopefully that will not happen. That will do it for us. Happy Bobby Bonilla Day to everybody. As today, Bobby will get a check for $1.1 million, $1.19 million from the New York Mets, and that continues on July 1st through 2035. It's good to be Bobby Bonilla. Thank you, folks, for those who hung in with us. It's been a technical disaster, but thanks to everybody here at Sports 56 for getting us up and running over the last hour and a half, and especially our producer, Elijah Seegers, for doing a great job. It was nonstop. I'm going to use the facilities here in just a moment because I'm about to explode. Our thanks to Connor O'Gara, to Joe Mullinax, to Mickey Barker for joining us on the show. Tomorrow, Grizzlies talk with DeMichael Cole. We'll check in on the Cardinals with Katie Wu, the Tigers in their latest 7'1" addition with Parth Upadhyay from the Daily Memphian. It all begins tomorrow, bright and early, starting at 7 a.m. Hopefully you'll join us for that. Again, all the hard work around here, it does get noticed, folks. And thank you for listening to the program. That'll do it for us. Coming up next, it is Brian Dacus. It is Elijah Seegers. They are in for Dave Woloshin once again. It's Wolo and Friends on Sports 56, and that's coming up next.
Thank you guys for sticking with us once again. We're making the transition here in between shows from Sports 56 mornings to Wolo and Friends. I'm Elijah Seegers. I'll be with Bryant Dacus today. We are currently making the change. As you have heard from Greg throughout the morning, we have been dealing with some technical issues due to the storms in the area last night. We have fortunately been able to get back on the air, but are still dealing with some issues with our computer systems up here. So we will get Bryant on the air here shortly, and until then, I'll go ahead and run through these free agent signings once again. The Memphis Grizzlies yesterday extending Jaren Jackson Jr. to a 5-year, $240 million contract. Next year, he will be set to make $32 million, as it is the last year of his current deal that he's on before the extension, and he will start that new contract in the 2026-2027 season. Also, the Grizzlies signed Santi Aldama to a 3-year, $52 million deal. Brian and I were on the air yesterday talking about him potentially making around that money, and so that wasn't as a surprise to me, really. I think it's a good deal for both sides, especially with the Grizzlies needing perimeter shooting and the scoring that Santi can provide off the bench. The Ty Jerome signing, how about that? 3 years, $28 million. I believe that's a great deal for a guy and Ty Jerome, who I had as my sixth man of the year this past year. Obviously, he had his struggles in the playoffs, especially in that series against the Indiana Pacers, but he should come in and be a very productive player right away. And also the Grizzlies sign Cam Spencer off of a two-way to a guaranteed contract at 2 years, $4.5 million. Great to see the young guy get that deal and could potentially work his way into the rotation at some point this year. We'll see how that goes with the Grizzlies. A lot of moving parts there, a lot of moving parts here. And Brian Dacus, I see, is settled in and ready to go, so let's bring him in.
Yeah, it's almost like a one of those like 24-hour telethons or something like that. We're just getting in and out. So I guess this is the Willow